Cruise Director. I'd like to start, if I don't see Mayor Buckley. Sheila, if you'd like to start us off with welcome.
Yes, first of all, thank you all for volunteering. I twisted a few arms, Jared, but most people were very willing, and Jared was also. This is a really important task, and that is to help us, the City Council, to make a decision about our public works facility based on the facts. And so you guys are the experts that have been brought in to give us the facts. And so Jared has graciously agreed to chair this group, and he's got a timeline, I think, that he shared with you already. Our city code, or the amendment to the code, says that the report should be in by the end of the year. But he's got other plans for you, so I think you might have a Christmas vacation in a timely fashion. So anyway, just to say thank you for being here, thank you for the work you're doing. You will have city staff as your resources, and so Jared will know with whom to go to in order to tap into that staff information. So with that, if you have no questions, I'll turn it over to the chair and say thank you again.
Thank you. I'll save some space to Mayor Buckley. Does anyone know if he's coming from city staff? Is he still planning?
He's supposed to be here.
All right, we'll just move on. So I have a few rules of meetings. In my mind, it is meant to be helpful. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to read that. Hopefully everyone can put away cell phones and just be focused on tasks at hands, and we can be done in a timely fashion and move on to everything that's going on. I saved some time for introductions. I thought it would be helpful to go around the table, everyone introduce themselves. The order that we're in is more or less having grouped together, so transportation people are together, business people are together, and so on. So it's random because it's not alphabetical, that's why. There's a lot of faces I don't know, so if you can please tell us a little about yourself and what expertise you bring, and why don't we start on one side and go around.
Poor decision on where to sit, right? Thank you. My name is Joel Campbell. I'm originally more or less from Annapolis. Lived in Eastport growing up till my family moved overseas. I moved back here a little over 4 years ago when my wife took an assignment at the Naval Academy, and live now in the Kingsport neighborhood, just off of Forest Drive. I'm sure everyone is familiar with Kingsport, where we've lived for the past couple of years. I work in the IT field, mostly in mapping, geographic information systems, if anybody's familiar with those. I have some expertise, obviously, in that area. Also, I'm a former property appraiser, and just sort of all around know nothing, jack of all trades kind of thing, but I'm more than happy to support the effort here based on its impact on our community, if nothing else.
Thank you, Joel. I didn't have you in my list as being on the task force, so this is the first time we're meeting.
Yeah.
So from your description, do you know, were you asked to be on a specific subcommittee?
I was not. I had volunteered right after the passage, and Dan, our president of our HOA, called me last night, let me know this was going on and asked me to join. I'm happy to serve on any of them.
We'll be talking about the different subcommittees a little later on, so when that time comes,
Absolutely.
Volunteer yourself. And I don't have your contact information. My email is jared, Jared, @kbtree.com.
Okay.
Do me a favor, send me an email when you get a chance with your email and phone number.
You bet. I think I have your email from the list.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Dan Brooks, I'm the president of Kingsport Homeowners Association. In terms of qualifications, not exactly sure. They voted me to be the president, and I've been in the Navy 23 years, so I've seen a lot of different leadership. I've dealt with infrastructure, also kind of in the cyber business, but I lived in Kingsport for about 3 years, and trying to get our residents involved. I asked Joel and another gentleman, Tom Baker, and probably one other, to be kind of the Kingsport reps on my behalf, because I probably won't be able to continue these meetings, especially during the day. But I asked them, I'm going to divide and conquer, get some folks from the neighborhood to help us out.
So that's Ward 4, correct?
Ward 4, yes.
Great. And so if you have someone that will be substituting for you, that's great. Obviously, just send me the contact information, please. I'll get that into our email list.
Okay.
Please.
Hi, my name is Myron Carter, Academy graduate, a longtime resident of Ward 1, and for the last year, a resident of Ward 5. I'm in the lobbies downtown, and was an acolyte of the great Mrs. Wright.
Thank you, Myron. Welcome.
Hello, name's Kathy Ebner. I am a resident in Eastport in Ward 8, and I've actually grown up in the Annapolis area, born and raised here. But I work for Homes for America, and we are a nonprofit developer of affordable rental communities. And we own 3 properties in the city of Annapolis. We own Bay Forest City Apartments, which is behind the Giant Duck Bay Ridge. We own a property in Clay Street, but we also own Homes of the Glen, which is located on Juliana Circle, and it would be adjacent to the proposed site of the public works facility.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Heidi Rothenhaus, and I'm here today to stand in for Roger Kaiserball, who's on vacation. Roger and I live in a neighborhood called Truxton Heights. We're part of Ward 1, but we're over in the neighborhood between here and Spa Road. Our neighborhood backs up to the current public works site.
Thank you. Thank you for subbing in today. And, so here, Curtis.
My name is Curtis Jones. I'm not an Annapolitan. I'm not even from Maryland. I grew up in Philadelphia, joined the Marine Corps, 21 years there, and I retired here in Annapolis after being stationed here at the Naval Base. And I'm here because basically I'm an honest broker. I don't live in Annapolis. I can't book from nobody in Annapolis. I live in Elmwood County. I live in the Cape St. Clair, Arnold area, and my background, communications and security. So I look at things a lot differently from the average person. That's why I call myself an honest broker.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Scott Gibson. I'm the president of the Emerald Heights Improvement Association. But the reason why I volunteered for this is I spent most of my career in public administration. My role previous to leading the nonprofit that I'm at now was to serve in the cabinet of Harford County Executive David Craig, where I was a senior policy advisor and chaired his commission and task force on efficiency and economy and government. And I've also been on the adjunct faculty of Mount St. Mary's University since 2007, where I teach public administration with a focus on public finance. I have been involved in a couple of land swap transactions, though I would stop short of saying I'm an expert on land swap transactions because I think they're all unique by their very nature. They're usually governed by the circumstances that got everybody to the board. So I thought it would be helpful to join the committee.
Thank you. Welcome.
Bill Davidson. Like Curtis, I'm from outside. A long time Annapolis lover. I'm retired. I've spent most of my career in public service, and the last 18 years was in Montgomery County, where I was a solid waste manager. My expertise, I'm not really an expert in anything, but I did a lot of finance. I managed an enterprise fund, so there was the financial aspects there. And some public bond refinancing projects. So there's some OJT type financial work, and environmentalist and professional trained in environment. So those are my 2 interests, and I think that's why I got on this committee.
Thank you. Welcome.
Don Hankins, Representative ASME, Local 3406 President, and I represent the public works employees.
Thank you. Welcome. As I alluded to, I'm Jared Lippman. I own Canyon Beach True Value. So my background is business in the last 15 years or so. Also served on the city council for 5 years. With a couple familiar faces there. And I'm an attorney by training, and actually I used to represent the department that Bill worked at. So we go back from early 2000s. So a few different pieces of experience.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Diane Hayslip. I am from the Housing Commission of Anne Arundel County. I'm the deputy CEO there. I'm representing Cliff Martin, who is our CEO. And we own and operate public housing. We administer housing choice vouchers. We have tax credit properties. So we develop affordable housing in the county and have about 9 communities spread throughout.
Hi, I'm Elaine Powell, President of Whitehall Development. We are a real estate development company. You pause for any booze and hisses, etc. But a friendly crowd here, so. Native Annapolitan, and I do work primarily in Monroe County, City of Annapolis, Howard County, Prince George's County. That's our sort of areas of concentration.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Phil Hager with the County Office of Planning and Zoning. And I do apologize, I have an engagement at 4 o'clock where I'm the lead speaker, so I'm gonna be slipping out a few minutes early. Delighted to be part of this today, thank you.
Craig Stewart, I'm with Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I've also worked in Anne Arundel County government, basically 30 years between the two of them. I handle currently long-range planning for the school system, deal with real estate, and have been involved in many land swaps and other things with government property over the years. So I'll be glad to help wherever I can.
I'm John Corrin, I'm president of Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County by AAA. We're an all-volunteer 501c3, 6 years old. We launched as a project of leadership Anne Arundel. And I also chair the Anne Arundel County Bicycle Advisory Commission, which is comprised mostly of, citizens from all over the county, including City of Annapolis, government reps, mostly from the county, but also some from the city, and some from SHA. So my interest, though, is beyond biking. It's really mobility. It's really how do we move people around, preferably without cars, walking, biking, transit, ride sharing, and then full disclosure, I drove here. I biked here, I've biked in many a meeting, but full disclosure, I did drive here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nestor Flores. I'm with Anne Arundel County Traffic Engineer, Department of Public Work, and my division operates forest driving, the 12 signals that's working there. I've been with the county for 17 years, and the Annapolis area has been my area since the beginning.
Thanks, Brian.
Good afternoon, my name is Darryl Kale. I'm a Ward 4 resident. I live in the Village Green community, which popped up like about 4 years ago, which is right there on Skipper's Lane and South Cherry Grove. So it sounds like we're gonna be directly impacted by whatever decisions come out of this. I'm an attorney by trade, but I do family law, so it has nothing to do with this. But I'm also a mediator, so I'm very good at facilitation. I'm very good at getting people who are unstuck and finding common ground. So, and I worked in the federal government for 20 years, and I've done research on policy decisions, so I can be helpful in the area of doing research. So I'm here to help out as best I can. That would be me, and this is not me. Actually,
That would be me.
I don't mind being alderman, but I'll be the person.
Trust me, be careful before you say that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lynn Farrow. I'm the incoming Assistant City Manager, and so I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Tom Baum, Laterra Homes. I'm going to save my introduction for my presentation.
David Gerald, the Director of Public Works. It's my department is looking for a home.
Before we go on, I just want to make a distinction. So who we've heard some are all committee members, and so everyone else here is to help us and be resources. So when you hear that everyone else introduce themselves by department or their position with the city or other entities, keep in mind that those are resources, and I'll try to have their names and numbers available, but you've heard from all the task force members.
Ross Arnett, Alderman Ward 8. I'm not expert in anything, so I figured that qualified me to run for office. Along with Sheila, we're going to be consumers of your output.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Baker, Ward 4, and also Kingsport Community.
Tom Baker.
Excuse me, we're having a reunion.
Yeah.
Tom, I didn't see you on my list. Are you on the committee?
He's going to be one of the gentlemen who's going to help me out.
Got it. All right. Thank you. I was forgetting that name. Thank you. Sheila, I think we skipped you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, Sheila Finlayson, Alderwoman representing Ward 4. My ward is the ward that this discussion evolves around, both Spa Road and Forest Drive. So, and again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome to our Transportation Department of City Employee here on behalf of the recording.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm Archie Trader, Director of Recreation and Parks. If the project comes to fruition on Park Road, the Recreation Department will lose the Williams Well multi-purpose field, the only field that the city of Annapolis owns outright. recreation facility will be over and done.
That's not true, actually.
As we said. Thank you for joining us.
Sally Nash, Department of Planning and Zoning.
Jeff Cloud, Director of Environmental Policy.
Thank you.
I'm Carrie Berger, Acting City Attorney.
Thank you.
I'm Josh Greenberg, I'm an intern with Senator Alfred's.
Great. Mayor Buckley,
Manalia Harrison, and I'm an attorney with the Mayor's Office.
can you say that again, please?
I'm an intern for the Mayor's Office.
Thank you.
Susan Smith, Mayor's Office.
Mitchell Stevenson, Mayor's Office.
Brian Callahan, the mayor's office.
Thank you.
The mayor. Oh, bring it to public works admin.
Thank you. Mayor
And
Buckley.
Mayor Buckley, just want to thank everybody for giving us all this time. I'm really looking forward to hearing your expertise on this and see if we come up with something. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. So if you did not get an email from me this morning with the agenda with the time slots, it means I don't have your email and contact information. And if you'd like to, for me to have it, you gotta send it to me, please. So again, my email is Jared, Jared, @kbtruevalue.com. So please send me your contact information if you'd like to be added. And we'd like to have it. All right. Moving on, Mayor Buckley, do you want to add any more remarks?
I think I'll probably say something after Tom presents and you present.
Okay, very good. So next up we have David Gerald, and we're way ahead of schedule.
We're way ahead of schedule. That's great.
Yeah.
Very well for us, right?
Yeah.
So there's a handout that's coming around, and I'll just wait a minute because there's a lot of pictures for you to look at. So I'll wait till you get those and then we'll. So the intention of this presentation is just to present sort of the basic facts of what Public Works needs as far as the new site goes without. There's a little bit of information about both of the sites, more factual and not any opinion or recommendation or pro and con based. Just try to be factual. So did everybody get a copy? Okay, so you see on the front here, so on the left is the old facility, which is now demolished. It was demolished a couple of years ago in preparation for the construction project. And on the right-hand side is the rendering for our new facility. If you turn the page, the site evaluation page here. So we've been working on this for a while. I got here in 2010, and I think in about 2012 we started working actively on this project to find a new home or to rebuild the existing facility. So these were the evaluation criteria that we looked at, because even back then, back in 2012, there was an interest in looking at other options. The mayor will talk a little bit about Speaker Bush and his interest in having us move somewhere else other than this site. So that really drove us from the very beginning to look at other sites in the city. And these are the kinds of things that we looked at when we looked at other sites in the city. So moving on to page 3, the operational issues. So what we need in this construction project is a 25,000 square foot building. Most of that will be our fleet maintenance shop. This project is going to allow us to consolidate the fire fleet shop, the police fleet shop, and the public works fleet shop. There's actually 4 separate shops, because transportation also has their own. But police and fire are going to close theirs down and make other use of their facilities at their buildings right now, and all of it's going to move to this current facility. So all of our basic maintenance functions are going to be in this new facility. And prior to 2010, when we had those extreme snow events and part of the facility was condemned, everything was together at Spa Road. Since 2010, it has not been. We've been divided through the city. The facility maintenance, fleet maintenance, all the work associated with the sewer, stormwater, streets, and water will all be in the same facility. 76 of my great personnel will be in the facility. We will have 105 vehicles, and these are vehicles and pieces of equipment, backhoe, pickup trucks, everything you can imagine that we use for our operations. Our operations go from 6 a.m. to 4:30 normally, but we have around-the-clock operations as needed. So if we have a main break during the night, we go in and we go to our maintenance facility and get all the equipment we need and go to the site. If we have snow events during the nighttime, we run the operations all night long. So that needs to be 24/7. And then right now, our refueling operations, and you've probably seen these if you've driven by Spot Road, we have a little gas station there. So that's currently at Spot Road. So again, that's the rendering of our new facilities. It's 100% designed. We were ready to build it, and then we stopped the project to look at this other opportunity. If you look on page 5, that's a different site, and that's actually an accurate photo. So you can see where the gas pumps are on the east side of Spot Road. That's the site where it was demolished. That's where we were intending to build, and you'll see that in just a minute. Down to the lower right, down where it says Spot Creek, that's an area where we have storage for equipment and for cars and for pipe and all the things that we use. And we also park vehicles back there. Williams-Wayland Field is not part of Public Works right now. As Archie Trader mentioned, that's a Rec and Park field. We're operating totally from the west side, the left side of this picture. So we have a fleet maintenance garage, that's the current one that we're using. We also have a salt dome there. In the page 6. So this is the design that we currently have for Spot Road. You can see where the new facility is on the upper left corner. That's the 25,000 square foot building. And then we have conditioned storage just below that for vehicles that need to be parked in heated or air conditioned space overnight. You can see we're also adding facilities back in that little storage area down to the right hand side. You can see that there's a lot of space being taken up by stormwater management, between 50% of this site for stormwater management. For any of you that know much about stormwater management, we've increased that to 75% for redevelopment. So we're gonna have to decide. This predated the council resolution to increase to 75% treatment. So we'll have to decide if we're gonna change that, if in fact we build a Spot Road, or if we're gonna stay with the current design. Next page, page 7. So the size of the parcel on the east side is 8.24 acres, and that does include Williams-Wayland Field, so we don't have use of a lot of that. It's zoned for residential, but we got a special exception permit already. We got it in 2017 in anticipation of the construction. Design complete, as I mentioned, is funded at $5.8 million. The bulk of that funding, the $5.8 million, about $4.375 million came 5 years ago. So the prices have changed a lot in 5 years, but that's when most of that was appropriated by the council. So we've been kind of going through this process for a while. Williams-Wayland is built on fly ash, so the current location of that location where we did the demolition, that used to be an incinerator facility a long time ago, so they burned trash. So there was a lot of fly ash that was disposed of down below. We've taken samples and we're doing testing to see if that's contaminated, but we do know that it's fly ash. There's not big chunks of stuff down there, we know that. So, we heard stories that there's car engines and big things like that down there. We didn't find any of that, but we think there may be heavy metals and VOCs and things like that that would have to be dealt with. We went all the way through grading permit before we stopped the project. So what would have to happen is we wouldn't have to change the design unless we decide to for stormwater management, but our design builder would have to rebid the project to reprice it because the pricing that we had was 2016 pricing. Next page. So just some things that, some factual things about this Spot Road site. We have sufficient space because that's where we're operating from today. That's where the gasoline station is, it's city owned. Williams-Wayland Field is there, the project's ready to go, we just have to reprice it, as I just said. Residential zoning, it's next to Spot Creek, which certainly has its issues associated with sort of an industrial facility like this being right next to Forest Drive, I think you'll hear a lot more about this. I'm not going to delve into this very deeply, but this shows what the site is. Denny's here mostly because he's representing American Legion, and they're a key piece for this project site, because they're right next door. And we need, because the site is relatively small, we need to use some of their property to make this work. So if you turn to the next page, second to the last one, page 10, this is our concept design, very conceptual for how we would fit onto the site on Spa Road. So this shows that we would not go directly out onto the Forest Drive. There would be no right-in, right-out option for that. We would actually go back out the back and down Skipper Lane to South Cherry. That's what this concept is. There's certainly other options to look at, but that's what this option shows. And by doing that, we would gain additional parking, which would be needed along that Skipper Lane extension that would go out to Newtown. But you can see we would just site adapt the facility. This facility footprint and design wouldn't change. We would just plop it down on a different site. We'd have to design for stormwater management and make everything fit on here. But that is eminently doable. So the last page, page 11, the Forest Drive site. So it's interesting, if you look back at the concept design, this site is actually 4 sort of smaller parcels. 3 of them are adjacent, so they're on where it's developed. There's this very small strip that's over to the right-hand side of this, right next to Crystal Spring. And then there's a little bit wider strip of land where those 10 box containers are, and then there's a wider parcel where the building is shown. And then American Legion, and then there's another strip of land that's right next to Newtown. So all 4 of those are part of this deal. So that's important. Mr. Baum has access to, or has control over all 4 of those parcels, and that's what the land swap would include, all 4 of those parcels. So this lists the size of those, 2.86 for those 3 that we would be building on, and another 0.73 next to Newtown. As I mentioned, the access, if we went directly out to Forest Drive, would be right in, right out. That's how the American Legion is currently. That's how we would be. And that's only if the county allowed us to even have direct access. This is also zoned residential, much like Spa Road. So we would have to get a special exception permit, as we did over at Spa Road. Forest conservation plan would be required because this is a somewhat, not heavily treed, but it's a treed site. I mentioned the site adaption. There's not a lot of room here, and we would, I think based on my knowledge of the site, this would be considered new development, which our requirement now is 125% treatment for new development. So this would be tight to get that stormwater management all on site. There's always the option to do that off-site, but it's preferred if it's done on-site. Traffic analysis would be really important. We've got a sewer line that runs through this site, setback requirements, the plans that we will impose on the site. You all know that this is adjacent to a residential neighborhood. It does retain water, so the back part of this property has a pond on it, basically. If you're shaking in a second, you can see experiences of mosquitoes from the pond. So it needs to be regraded, and the drainage needs to be improved. And the timing would be subject to whatever would happen as well. Thank you.
Tom, you're up.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll stand because we've got everyone's up here.
We're still ahead of schedule.
And I need to stretch stuff.
Do we have an opportunity to ask questions?
We have time, so we're ahead of schedule. We've got, go ahead.
I had a couple of questions, just based off of your presentation. So on slide 2, you went through a site evaluation criteria a few years back where you determined some site requirements. Did you develop a potential site list? Did you go with a commercial realtor or anything to identify what, if any, other parcels in the city might have been available that met the requirements?
We did. We developed a list. Most of them were eliminated. The only one that stayed, and that was available then was the old Capitol Gazette site.
Okay.
So that's one that we actually moved into for a little bit. We rented it and moved into it and had some discussions, and we took the city council out to look at it. That was the only one that was really viable at the time. This site on Forest Drive wasn't even part of that evaluation. That wasn't one that made the list. We had a list of about 10 different sites that we looked at and used this criteria to grade them.
Okay.
And again, are you aware of the Capital Gazette site out off of Gibraltar?
Yeah.
That was the one that best met our requirements.
Can we get a copy of that list?
Yeah, there'll be I'm sure as you move through this, you'll have a lot of questions and data requests, and we'll provide all of them, whatever you need for your evaluation.
Can you send this document to me by email, please? Just so you know, by the way, I think it was in the initial memo, there's a website that the city's going to maintain for us, and so my intention is to post documents like this and to keep the public as informed as possible. That'll be particularly relevant to Ralph, but particularly for the public hearing that we'll talk about you.
Two questions about page 3. You talk about the potential for the 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. How many employees are you thinking would be on site 24/7?
Well, it all depends on what the operation was. So if it's snow removal, it would be upwards of 15 to 20 people. If it's just a main break, they would just be at the water main break, they would just be there temporarily to pick up the things that they need, and then they would go to the break.
Okay, so it's only at certain times it would be 24/7, not all the time.
It would just be under emergency conditions, yeah.
And then-
No, it certainly would not be all the time.
Okay. And then you mentioned about the refueling is currently at Spa Road, I'm just not clear, but is the proposal for that to remain at Spa Road if?
No.
It would
So
move
that
to the
would be
Forest Drive?
removed, and we would not move that out to Forest Drive. We would have other fueling options other than that.
Okay.
There's a few options that we would consider.
So the fuel tanks would not move to the Forest Drive site?
Is one of them the county, because I just if it's okay while we're on that, is one of them
Yeah,
the
there's-
county at the detention center?
So there's really sort of 3 options. One is the county one on Jennifer Road. The state has a fueling station on Taylor by the police station there, police barracks, and then we could just do a contract with the commercial
Thank you.
Couple of questions, if you don't mind, just for clarity, on page 3, you indicate parking for 105 vehicles, that's just the county-owned, city-owned vehicles, that doesn't include the staff of 76?
That's right, so we would need basically 76, somewhere around 76 for our employees.
So close to 200 parking overall. And then, the other question I had was on the Spa Road, or the Forest Drive site. Who controls the property south of the proposed area?
Crystal Spring, that's Crystal Spring property.
Crystal Spring.
Any other questions?
Do we know the long-term plans of the National Guard Armory off of Hudson?
I do not personally.
Is that ever on that?
That was on the list, because I think 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that they were talking about closing that, and that would have been a good option for us. I think they backed away from that, but I don't know what their long-term feedback is.
David, just a question on page 10, where I guess that's Skipper Lane, where it goes to Crystal Springs, was there a plan to extend that road over to Crystal Springs?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the city's comprehensive plan shows that as sort of a Forest Drive bypass, so it would extend into Crystal Springs property. So if that happened, then the parking that we have shown there would no longer, it would become a public street. So it would be available for the public, but it wouldn't be dedicated for our employees. So that's an important factor in all of this, is if that ever happens, then that parking that's shown there ceases to exist.
So just to get clarity, what street, that's Skipper's Lane, where the parking is now?
It's the Skipper Lane extension, yeah.
Well, it's parallel with Forest Drive.
But if what do they call Providence Point, if Providence Point had to use that, then they would have to accommodate the parking somewhere else.
Can I ask one more level set question? Sorry, maybe we'll get to this later. Is there an absolute requirement to maintain the facility within the city limits, or is it possible to move it outside?
We're getting into policy questions now, and I guess my preference would be as centrally located as possible, because that allows us to quickly get all of the city. So that would be my desire. That's a policy question for the guy sitting next to me and the other on the city council. So.
So I guess maybe the question is, at the moment, councilors, mayor, is there something on the books that says it needs to be within the city limits, or is that an open for conversation?
I think that's up for question, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's an official position. We've always supported David's position of wanting to be in the city, but no law or code that addresses that.
Thank you, sorry.
It's a small city.
Yeah,
So I mean,
understood.
we're not talking about, you know, tens of miles, even if, you know, with my mom.
Understood.
All good questions, and we still have time for more if anyone has any right now. We'll have time at the end as well, if something occurs to you. Not seeing other hands, Tom?
Okay, thank you. Again, Tom Baum, I'm the owner of Latera Homes, based in Annapolis. I founded Latera Homes at the end of 2018, but my experience in housing spans 25 years in the state of Maryland, DC, Virginia area. The previous 18 years before I started the company was with a group I'm sure most of everyone's heard of, the Bizzuto Group. I was a partner there for the last 18 years. And my experience really is with all types of housing, which is somewhat unique. I have developed multifamily rental, I've developed affordable housing, I developed for sale housing, I've developed, as I said, market rate as well as affordable. I've done urban mixed-use projects as well as townhomes and single families. So it pretty much spans the spectrum of housing types. My first experience with Annapolis came about, I guess about 7 or 8 years ago, actually almost 10 years ago, when I developed for Bizzuto the townhomes on the old Evening Capitol site at Southgate and West Street, which is built today and is standing there. Going through that development process, quite honestly, I fell in love with the city. I love the community, so much to the fact that I uprooted my family and we moved here about 2 years after we started that development, and have been a resident of the city ever since. I think it's a great community and I care very deeply about it. But it's also sparked my passion for the possibilities in Annapolis. I think there's tremendous possibilities to enhance what's already a great city. And so I set out, again, through Bizzuto to look for those types of opportunities. And mostly I found along West Street some great opportunities to do urban infill or suburban infill, sort of complete the puzzle of West Street. Presently, you'll see under construction 2 communities that I developed here. One is across from the Lowe's Hotel, which is a 23-unit condominium building that is now, the units are being sold, it's being in its final phases of construction. And just starting 18 townhomes across from the West Street, also on West Street. And so I've been heavily involved in development issues in Annapolis for the past 10 years consistently. And so in fact, I've probably developed more of these types of communities in those past 10 years than probably anybody, certainly as many as anybody. And so I have a great familiarity with the process and the people and the needs and as a resident as well, my own observations. One of those observations came about 3 years ago when the city was undertaking their special exception use for the public works facility proposed at Spa Road to rebuild that facility. And my observation was I could not believe that there wasn't a higher and better use for such a phenomenal piece of property that sits along the headwaters of Spa Creek that would have a better use than having literally 2.5 acres of asphalt that sits alongside, I mean literally within 10 feet of the creek in places. It just seemed a paradox to me that on the other side of the fence that walled off the dump yard for public works, Spa Conservancy was undertaking a $3 million renovation of the stream. Yet on the other side, there was untreated asphalt just running right into it. So it just seemed like there would be a better and higher use for this, what I consider to be a gateway site to the community. This site is immediately adjacent to Maryland Hall. With my experience and work on West Street, the Arts District there is really struggling to find an identity You know, it's an arts district, and there's plenty of artists there, but you don't really feel like where does this start and stop, this arts district. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people would probably say, what arts district? I felt like this site could become the gateway, not only to Annapolis, but to the arts district itself. Utilizing Maryland Hall, building off of the prominence that Maryland Hall has established, and establish this site as sort of the gateway, arrival point to the arts district. It's not presently in the arts district, it's immediately adjacent to it, but it could be extended and incorporated. I've had conversations with the arts district folks who were very supportive of doing something like that. So, again, almost 3 years ago, I put a proposal into the city for a redevelopment and an alternative location for public works to occur and to do a new housing development at this location. At the time, there was the old incinerator building. If anybody recalls that building, if you look at it, it was a beautiful old, you know, like industrial type of building with big glass windows and a big smokestack from it. I had proposed making it not an arts use, like a theater or a community nonprofit type of space to be repurposed in that building. And then to develop housing around that would essentially pay, you know, the housing, say why housing? Well, it pays for some of these ambitious things that the city wants to accomplish here. I mean, that's sort of the currency, if you will, for accomplishing these things. On the opposite side, the west side of the site, I had proposed an affordable housing community there, artist lofts that would sort of dovetail in with the arts district. That as part of a tax credit of affordable housing, you oftentimes, or you gain points for having nonprofit uses and other ancillary community benefit uses inside of that community. So I've been speaking with the Annapolis Film Festival, who's looking for a home, just a general nonprofit community space that could be made available as part of that, in addition to galleries and things like that would serve the artists that could now afford to live in the arts district and sell their art in the gallery space and really make this a gateway entrance and also solve or help solve an affordable housing need. So that was the proposal that dated back 3 years ago. At the time, quite frankly, it was an election year, and long story short, it kind of got lost in the shuffle. It was sort of maybe too late to the party. Public Works was kind of ready to go. You know, the election was happening, and so, you know, lo and behold, the building gets torn down, and the smokestack is gone. The old historic incinerator building was gone, and I put my proposal on the shelf and sort of forgot about it, quite honestly, because I thought, you know, this is unfortunate, but you know, this is the future. Fast forward after the election, Mayor picks up on the idea of this this proposal and really gets, you know, with his vision, gets behind this and sort of amplifies it with a bicycle trail, the connectivity idea of connecting all the neighborhoods in Annapolis, I think is a wonderful thing. And this would be an integral part of that, this bicycle trail that, I'm not sure if anyone's seen these, sorry about that, seen these photos or not, but currently there's a trail that goes along Spa Creek and then ends up at grade trying to cross Spa Road. And I live back in this neighborhood and never go this way because it's just treacherous. I mean, there is a button there to push, but it's just not conducive really to a continual bike ride. You have to sit there for a long time. If you're, you know, a lot of people just go for it and go across the road. I won't let my son go that way because it's just, I think it's just too dangerous. This would allow for sort of a linear park along the creek to occur with a trail, pedestrian and bike trail, that because the grade of Spa Road drops more so than does the property, you can kind of get up and over Spa Road without having to go up and over. It's just kind of a gentle rise given the existing topography. And then it would allow you to connect the trail back to the existing trail that then continues on all the way over to the West Street and eventually connects over to Poplar Street Trail. So I think that's just a wonderful idea. The proposal also, this revised proposal, as we were talking about it, relocates Weems Wayland Field onto school board property, which again was an idea to sort of repurpose green space that's currently there is not organized into a field. It's actually kind of a marshy, underutilized area of the park along here, and it would easily accommodate the dimensions of what's currently the Weems Wayland Field. So the proposal would be that it would be relocated to that location there. And then, and again, as part of that proposal would be to redo the two existing fields that are, quite frankly, in pretty poor condition. So those are some of the things that came out of the city side in terms of what could we do with this, you know, if we were able to move this forward. One thing I should say is sort of, you know, what is, it may be somewhat confusing. What is a land swap anyway? That may be a fundamental question that needs to be answered. It's really essentially just, I have a piece of property that the city wants to purchase, the city has a piece of property that I want to purchase, and we each purchase it simultaneously, so you're sort of swapping the land, but the city land is more valuable than the land that they're trading for, so that it would come with money that then could be used to facilitate these other programs or other activities. One of the questions is, well, what is that differential? And the numbers, you know, it's sort of hard to sort of pin it down, right? Because there's a lot of different variables that have to go into the equation. Number one is how much housing will the city, the community support on this property? That establishes a base value. What are the requirements above and beyond the typical city requirements that are on the books now? Because there's been some discussions about, well, we'd like to do a showcase stormwater management facility that sort of shows off the capabilities of stormwater management, and kind of do a showcase that would, you know, result in costing some additional money to do that. There was a question about contamination. I'm not aware of any contamination there. I think the city's testing for contamination right now. But if there is contamination, it needs to be dealt with, because if there is contamination under Weems Wayland Field, just think of it, it's a big leach field right now. Water goes through the grass, through whatever is underneath, and out to Spar Creek. So we can't bury our heads in the sand saying, let's not do this because the site could be contaminated. My opinion is quite the opposite. If it were contaminated, we need to do something about it, because people swim in that creek, and that's our, you know, that is our treasure, Spar Creek. And so, again, I have also experience with environmentally contaminated sites, extensive experience with that. I've developed sites for years in the city of Baltimore, on chromium, on gas stations, in fact, even on Squaw Road, across from the West End, that it was an old dry cleaner site, highly contaminated. We worked with the state, with MDE, to get a plan in place, and we've capped that. We're in the process of capping that site to deal with the ground contamination there, groundwater contamination. So if, and it's still a, yeah, but if this were contaminated, that doesn't mean don't do something. It means we've got to do something. Even if Public Works stays there, you've got to deal with it. So I just provide the mechanism through this proposal of creating dollars to deal with it. So that is, you know, this proposal, again, depends on sort of what collectively the city ends up giving me as a program. I proposed in this plan 40 homes located on the east side of the property that would be for sale. The west side of the property, we've had various discussions on, be it the affordable housing option with an artist loft project or other type of project, be it just a community nonprofit type of use, which probably wouldn't generate any money to the city. In fact, it may cost money, I don't know. Or just repurposing the existing industrial style buildings there into some sort of cool, nonprofit space that could utilize the existing structures that are there. So this is really still very much a dialogue that I would hope comes out of this. If the answer is yes, let's move forward, then the answer is move forward with what? How many homes? We want to trade, considering that that's the currency, you got to balance that with affordable housing, with all these other things that may need to be dealt with in the dirt, and create a differential that allows for these other things that the city desires, the bike bridge, the trails, and things like that to occur. So, in a nutshell, that's the proposal. I think that this is a tremendously valuable piece of property that should be more than a public works project. This has the opportunity of putting a tax roll back on the books here versus a community or a public facility that would generate no taxes. And I think, again, the gateway location here merits having something more for this location and for the city. So I'm not sure if I missed anything, but I'm open to questions.
I have a couple of questions. I want to start off by saying I agree. I think a lot of this is about highest and best use of both of the properties. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. You said that you think 40 home sites can be developed on the eastern section of the property. How many home sites are you tentatively looking at if you were to develop the Forest Drive property?
If I were to develop the Forest Drive property, how many? Well, it depends the type of use. The other uses that would go there, there's been assisted living facilities that have proposed uses there, and they would be upwards of 80 to 100, I would say, on that site. That's probably the most dense proposal, but it would be something of that size.
And then from a real estate perspective, is there a material difference in median home value if it's at that Forest Drive site versus the Spa Road site?
Yes, I would say that there is, and that's why this generates a greater land value than Forest Drive. That sort of plays on the differential of the two. If it were equal, then it wouldn't generate any funds for the city to use.
Yeah.
Question. So, and both of those parcels are the two parcels where you're proposing to put the public works site, one is owned R2 and the other one's owned R3. So that, in terms of what's allowed now, in terms of density, it's very low. But
other than a PUD, you could propose a higher density up to R4.
My question for you is, so can you just clarify what you have a purchase option on? So I know you have an option to purchase the two R2 and R3 parcels.
This is all under one ownership. This parcel.
So you have a purchase option for that entire parcel from Forest Drive all the way back to the extended Skipper's Lane? Or are you just talking about
this parcel,
easement, that whole parcel?
and this parcel here, which is composed of three parcels. So it's these three and this one. This centerpiece is owned by Mr. Gunny over here, the American Legion, and an easement or some arrangement would have to be obtained to connect this parcel with this parcel.
And has that been negotiated? Is that part of the value that's already been negotiated?
Well, I've had discussions with Gunny, there's no formal agreement. Okay. And it would be more the city talking with Gunny because or the Legion, because there's opportunity here. And I think what we had talked about was there's a lot of needs that the American Legion has, and has no money to fund, if I may say. So, cleaning up the water, Victory Garden, I think, was one of the things that you were looking for. But this parking lot is in really poor condition, which seems to be a natural fit with this public works use to share spaces, because predominantly their needs are off hours, and these parking spaces are needed only on hours, other than potential off-hour emergency uses.
And if I may, just since we have the visual right there on the map, so the townhomes that you see, that's the homes of the Glenn's property that I was referring to, that my organization owns, and it is just while we're doing fact finding, so it is a lease purchase community. So the residents here had been renting for 15 years. They had to be for that period of time due to the tax credit financing, and we've now sold 6 homes. And 4 of the 6 are, you know, right there in that one building, coincidentally. But we're in the process of selling the homes to the residents, so that's just part of the equation as well.
Can I just ask, Tom, is your proposal to develop the Spa Road property into your vision of housing and stuff?
Yeah.
Is that completely dependent upon a land swap, or is that a proposal that exists if we moved Public Works to the moon?
Well, my proposal is for finding a home for Public Works at Forest Drive, and then doing this land exchange with money that frees up the these dollars for the city to use on their facilities. If it were somewhere else, number one, I don't know where that is, because I think the city's done a pretty exhaustive search, at least inside the city limits, from what I understand, trying to find other locations, alternative uses over these past 3 years, and haven't found anything. And if they did find something, then sort of the equation still has to say, well, if you find a $10 million piece of property, it's probably not, it would be a negative value to the Spa Road site. So for me, for my proposal, it would be, you would need to swap those properties so those values would stay the same.
Question on the other bracket there, back to the developed site that you're looking at off of Spa Road. Oh, yeah, one behind it. Redoing the recreation fields, is that something that we were considering, that this part, the money from the land swap would go to move those fields and pay for turf? I think we were talking about. Is that, or is that part of your cost?
Yeah, so that would give us seed money to apply for grants to get for field expansions. I'd already spoken to the speaker before he passed, and we actually have got some money into the school's budget for the field inside the track, the Bates field inside the track. So that's in motion. So we only have 2 fields to cover now.
Do we know how much those fields cost per field?
Yeah, they're expensive. If you know, if
$850,000
yeah.
each.
Okay.
The speaker gave us $1 million. At this point, it's on hold from my perspective, because I'm in discussions with the city, and my concern, they're treating it as impervious, even though it's 57 stone porous, and that changes a lot of things, and they were asking for a lot of mitigation, and that project cost could go a lot higher, and so at this point I haven't even moved it forward until we talk a little bit more with the city and the critical area commission, because all this property that we have is all within the critical areas, and it's in LDA zone. So it limits the impervious coverage to like 15%. So there's some challenges ahead with it. But I think it's something that we need to talk with the city and see how we want to move forward, especially with both the stadium field and anything we do on the lower field.
I've spent time with Dr. Olato and taught these things through. But these fields haven't been invested in a long time, and the Weems Whalen field hasn't even been accessible till the last couple of years. The Weems Whalen field had a chain link fence around it, and it was completely privatised pretty much by St Mary's. When St Mary's built their new field on Bestgate Road, then we finally had access to it. That's my understanding. But if you look at the club rooms there, if you look at the conditions of the scoreboards, that whole area has not had any investment in for a long time. But it has so much potential because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and again, the reason for us is normally stadiums are high schools, and this is really serving as the Bates Middle School. And, we don't normally have tracks and stadiums with middle schools. And our budget is, we've got a couple $1 billion backlog, and this is fairly low on the priority list. However, the speaker's held back. This past session, again, he was throwing money at it, and we've been talking over the years to try to fix this up. Certainly, it's something that.
And the reason I ask this is because I coach soccer, mostly U9, U10 boys, with Annapolis Soccer Club, and so, and as a county league, and there are a lot of people that play soccer in the county, and when they come to our fields have been terrible. Now, they redid Powell Park, which is great now, it used to be awful, but these are very, very bad, and I know the marshy area, so my kids have played down here, and if you had 3 turf fields there, that would be a major amenity for the community. They'd get a lot of use. We use the Boys and Girls Club right now for the older kids, and that's a great field, gets a lot of use, but something like that it will be a huge draw for the community, and soccer is not a, it's not a rich kid sport, poor kid type of sport, it's an every kid. And we have a lot of, Hispanics and other, the communities that play soccer, and that would be a major draw to improve that area from my perspective, just from that role that I've been in. And those fields right now they're pretty poor and not very usable.
We have, Tom's time for just,
And the relocation of the Williams Wayland field would make it a multi-purpose like the Cal Ripken field exists now. So there is a baseball diamond, as well as lacrosse, as well as soccer, as well as football. So a multi-purpose field would be achieved through this. So.
And it's it was located for, or it was named after a veteran, is that correct? Williams Wayland, but World War II vet?
2 veterans.
Two veterans?
And Wayland, both died in plane crashes.
Okay.
World War II.
Yeah, because that could be, if it was new, that could be something you could make part of it as a refreshed memorial or something for veterans. I know kind of American Legion, same situation. It's a great way to honor veterans as well.
other questions for Tom?
Bill?
So Tom, is the proposal you've been describing, is this written down somewhere? Is this something we can put on the website so we can dig down to a little bit more and understand it better?
I have given an outline of a proposal to the city that's unnegotiated. So
It's a concept, but that's something you can.
Yeah, I could certainly give the brief of what I just discussed, and that'd probably be the more appropriate form rather than a.
Okay, so we can look at that more and have more questions on that. I don't want to drill down now.
Email me a version that I can say this is. This is Lotero's presentation. This is his
So
analysis.
if I could, so.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I did. So environmental contamination, environmental liability, you talked about that a bit going in. So I have a question about the status of, and I'm going to put this in context, and use some jargon. So the Resource Recovery and Conservation Act establishes environmental liability for land. And there's a requirement for phase 1, phase 2 level environmental studies so that the purchaser has, and you know about all this. So has the phase 1 and or phase 2 environmental liability study been done for the land we're talking about, the city's land that's subject to a possible swap?
I think
that been done?
I think they're doing that right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, we did that for the building site that we had intended to build on. We had never intended to build on the ball field. That's the part that.
That's my question. So for the whole land that we're talking about, has it been done for the whole land? Is it, okay, so it has to do with the timing. First of all, I think it's smart to raise that right away. It's an issue. From my experience, it can take time to get that kind of study done. And just the logic of the thing is that study has to be defined so you know what has to be done, so you know what it's going to cost to do it. It takes time to do the studies. It takes time to find out what it's going to cost to do that. It plays into the evaluations of the swap, and so that ties with time. So the status of contamination studies in that site, the status of phase 1, phase 2 studies for the site you already own, which you're talking about swapping, how about that? And then the time urgency. So I'm assuming that there's some urgency associated with this, the time urgency, and those can kind of butt against each other. The time necessary to do the contamination studies and the time necessary. So what's the urgency?
Yeah, there's a lot encompassed by those questions, so let me see if I can try to answer that. First of all, like I said, I've got a lot of relevant experience on dealing with contaminated sites and putting housing on them. So you're absolutely right in terms of the process with doing your environmental studies, phase 1, if that shows something, then you go to phase 2, and then you engage MDE, probably in this case for a voluntary cleanup program type of project. Which my experience at Spa Road was that was about a year's process, all in all, as we were going through the city's approval process. So it's not necessarily a linear thing. You need to get a handle on what that scope might be. You don't want to, be moving down a path and then realize it's a $10 million cleanup effort. But if it's a manageable site that you can foreseeably cap or something like that, we can get comfortable with that and move down the environmental path coincident with the public approvals. So, like I said, even if this were to stay as it is and there's contamination, I would think that would need to be done anyway. So
That's a good point, the done anyway part, so common to all options, no matter what gets done to satisfy the needs for DPW. If there's a contamination problem at the site, the city has to eat that cost. It has to be done somewhere, so it's not like that plays into the either or and that's a common to all options type of dollar sign. The problem we're raising is the timing, the when, and how it ties with getting this done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't speak to whether the city's legally required to clean it up, but morally, I would certainly say you're absolutely right. So that's something that you have to take into consideration. Again, I was under the impression that he was doing some.
We haven't done a formal phase 1 or phase 2. We took samples to see what was down there.
Okay.
And now we're testing those for contaminants.
Okay. So at least it's maybe not a formal phase 1.
That would be of interest to you, Tom, since if you were gonna purchase the site, become the owner of the site, you're not an instant purchaser, you know, you're gonna be liable for the site.
Well, no, actually, with environmental law, I'm not a lawyer, but I would never step into culpable status. There's ways that purchasers can go about entertaining a cleanup because that's for the public good without stepping into the liability of something that someone else has done to the site previous to that ownership. So there is a formalized process through the state and actually a federal process that allows a purchaser to do the cleanup work without stepping into that.
Yeah, innocent purchaser provision.
Let me interject a couple things. Number one, reintroducing Carrie Berger back there, who, on these legal issues, Carrie's gonna give us guidance and be the authority on those questions. So she'll let us know the answers are when we need to know. Second, to interject your comment about the urgency. The urgency is Public Works doesn't have a home, and so the Public Works employees need a home as quickly as possible. To answer that. Third point I want to mention is this is being recorded and being viewed by some people apparently. So please speak up. Is my point there. Is you have questions, speak up as loudly as possible.
So,
hold on a second, Curtis.
My question is basically what you said was Public Works doesn't have a home right now. So what are they working out of, and what are those conditions that they're working out of? It's sweltering heat out there right now. So are these guys suffering? Are they?
Yes.
What is the factor?
It's terrible. Yeah, I mean, I would love to
conditions?
answer that, but we've got an employee that's here, and he's the president of the union, so I'd love to hear his perspective.
See, that's my question. Number one is, you know, being a vet, dealing with the medical side, and being a disabled veteran, what is the city liability looking at in 5 years from now because of these people working conditions they're working out of? That's one of my concerns.
Quick, so let's hear what their conditions are like.
Basically, they're working out of 2 trailers on Spa Road that this, we got one from the county, I believe, that they were in the trash heap.
That sucks.
I
mean, I understand it's being recorded, but I'm just a realist here.
Yeah, I mean, you got one trailer being used for offices, and you got another trailer that is used for a locker room. These guys have no place to really sit down and eat if they want to eat lunch. They eat in their trucks, where you sit by in the locker room eating. There's 2 bathrooms in the locker room, male and female. We had to put the lockers in a way where the ladies were not walking through the male's locker room. And there again, you're still walking through the locker room if you're a female employee, which is not great. We did, her lower locker room, they have is a bathroom of a little, maybe 6x6 room, so she would have some place private. Would love people to come out and actually see the working conditions of this, because you really can't picture it until you see it.
Right, so.
I mean, employees, their morale is shot because they get promised, hey, we're gonna get a new building, and then we come to this now, we're at this stage where we're looking at it again. So they're looking at saying, come on guys. They're looking at other projects getting done, like Eastport Fire Station's getting a exercise room. And it's like, we don't even have a place to work out of. I work in facilities, I do the heat and air conditioning. I don't have a workstation, I'm working out of my truck. A lot of my equipment, we use storage bins over at off Taylor Avenue, and I can't keep my equipment there because it burns up or it fries. So it's a money issue also.
So basically, you know, the task forces look at where we're supposed to put this place at. What's best for the workers? You know, let's look at what's best for the people right now on hand. The one thing I see right now is we need to get these guys a better place to work out of, where we can get a place to move into. Because right now, they're suffering. And they can't do, they're not productive.
Yeah, production's way down because you're
So that's
running
cost-
here, running there, and
That's
just
costing
going
the city
somewhere.
more money.
I just want to be careful that we're not going to get too much into a debate on the issues.
I understand that, but I'm
There'll
just
be plenty
saying,
of time for that.
overall.
Yeah. I'm trying to just highlight the issues today. We'll debate them another day.
In terms of the deal that sort of is on the table, that I think I saw the presentation about, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but there's some dollars assigned to the existing site in exchange for the other site with some cash on top of that. Is it fair to understand from what you said that that can change based on the environmental issues, et cetera? Or is that rock solid at this point?
No, obviously, it's all dependent upon program. So that was based on a program of 40 homes and this configuration with conforming to today's zoning ordinances, if you will. And as soon as we say, well, you know, out of this committee, I would assume is going to be at least some guidance on perhaps, you know, more affordable housing or less affordable housing or more units or less units. The larger number of homes you build there, the more the dollars can go up. The smaller, fewer homes that you build, the dollars go down, obviously. And that would be impacted by contamination. So that would be something that would be impacted.
So there's some variables there that sort of would alter that deal in some way that are not known at this point.
That's correct, yeah, by anyone.
Question about the environmental studies, if the phase 1 and phase 2 need to be done, which they might need to be done in any case, is that something that can be expedited if there's extra, you know, white meat put on that problem so that we don't drag on? You know, sometimes they take a while doing, as they're aware, you know, we've got the mayor's backing of this, could we get that thing expedited very quickly? Because I think the urgency for the employees is also an important issue here, and the bond funding and everything.
I think that's the environment subcommittees, one of the questions that they'll be seeking to ask, and you'll tell us the answer when you report back to us as a subcommittee. Tom, I have a question about the timing of this. Speaker Kirsch's point about the urgency, it seems that the quickest thing would be for the city to, if the city was to agree with essentially a swap, is to not make it a swap, is the city to buy the Forest Drive property outright, build a facility, and then offer for sale the Spa Road, and that facility, of which you could be one of multiple bidders for. Would that work?
Well, you know, it obviously takes my idea and my opportunity out of my hand. So, you know, let's be honest, there's got to be something that is in it for me. So if there's a land value differential there, then it could be something I would discuss. But that's part of the negotiation. You know, my proposal was a swap. I realize the sense of urgency and the timing. Of course, the city has control over at least certain parts of the approval process. So, you know, I would hope that this could be expedited. But I also am a realist and know what expedited in the city means.
So perhaps the land use subcommittee will dive deeper into that question or that possibility.
Do you think you'll get financing, building structures over a landfill?
Yes. Yeah, as long as environmentally it's treated. Just no different than the dry cleaner site that's under construction presently on Spa Road. It happens. I mean, this country raw land is scarce. There's much more urban infill and suburban infill today, which means repurposed sites and so it's not an unusual measure by at all for sites to be built on some level of contamination.
So perhaps this is just commentary leading into a question, but I saw today this meme, and the picture was a sign that said we have a strategic plan that's called Doing Things. And the point of the image was you can actually study stuff to death, and you can evaluate all the possibilities to death. And I'm a little afraid, without a frank conversation about what is our scope and what is our job, we're going to attempt to boil the ocean. And that is a common theme that I've seen in public land swap deals that I've been involved in. And so I want to clarify what is our scope, and I guess I should start by just stating what my understanding of our scope is and making sure that we're locked down to that. I don't see our scope as evaluating whether or not there are other potential better deals. I sympathize with the quality of the temporary location issue, but that's a policy issue. That's not necessarily something I see as the scope of this task force. When I look at the resolution and I look at what's in front of us, you know, the questions are really kind of simple. Is a DPW facility on Spa Road the highest and best use for the city's needs? Is the deal as presented the best deal in the city's interest? And I think there's some struggle there because nobody has locked down and said, we want you to evaluate this proposal. I mean, what I think you should present the proposal that is most advantageous to you, and then if the city wants to make policy decisions of we want, you know, the water retention, we want this project, we want that, then that comes off of the deal, and there's a value for that you can translate. And then 3, really defining the metrics around how you got to those decisions. You know, is this the highest and best use? Was this a good deal or is this not a good deal? As advice to the council and to the mayor. So I want us to just, can we take a minute and reflect on what is our scope so we don't wander all over?
Our scope is very clearly defined in the resolution. It's to weigh the benefits and detriments of keeping the public storage facility in its current location or selling that Spa Road land and purchasing the designated property in Forest Drive to build a public works facility. That's it.
So
it's not to consider other possibilities.
Which is, right, thank you, and I think that's much different than asking what is the highest and best use of the site for the city. That's not the question on the table, it's exactly what you just stated, right?
Right, and so I'm gonna be asking the 8 subcommittees that this is a great transition question that you raised, I appreciate it. Our next task is to talk about the groups. As I've gotten it from the resolution, that's our governing body here, is we have 8 subjects, and I put them into 8 subjects. Each of those 8 groups, I'm going to ask for a chair of those committees, and each of those groups are going to submit a report to answer that specific question as it relates to their group. And then we're going to combine all 8 groups, do a collective summary, and hand it back to the city council. To all the points, time matters, time costs money, time, it's employment issue, morale issues. That's why I have us on an accelerated course. I have us getting done before Thanksgiving so we don't get delayed from the holidays. In 6, which is the first one, 6 particular milestones that we're going to have. So the real work and the questions that will need to be answered, like everyone's asking great questions here, they're not going to get answered during the meetings. We got to ask to have follow-up with Tom and the experts that are in the room as needed so that you can come back and tell us what the answers are. So with that, I will, referring to the task force memo, I'm not going to read it because everyone's gone already, but we have the 8 groups for the business representation. I think we just have Darrell, Hale, and myself. Darrell, you were there, and Darrell, since I'm chairing this, would you mind chairing the business subcommittee, please? Sure. Yes, thank you, appreciate that. City employees, I have Dan Hankins, and I know the name was sorry. I'm sorry, Don. I appreciate the correction. Don, and we have Jackie also. Bill. I'm sorry, just the 2 of you, Don and Jackie. And
Did you reach Jackie? She has a response.
I'm sorry, Jackie is actually at a convention.
Okay. Don, would you like to chair the city employees subcommittee, please? Thank you, I appreciate that. That usually not being here causes you to be the chair of something or get the responsibility. But we need to make sure that things are going to happen. So Don, I appreciate that. So city employees, and this is from the resolution, including DPW employee working conditions, employee relations, and morale. Sounds like you're going to be an expert at all those areas. Next is city finances, and we have Bill Davidson and Scott Gibson on that. Scott, where are you? Scott and Bill, you sit next to each other. That's why I have you guys, right?
We've already been.
All right, excellent. And so from the resolution, I took from the resolution, including tax revenues and cost of city services. I guess I'm getting a little ahead of the agenda by doing all these subcommittees, but will one of you like to volunteer yourselves to be the chair?
I'm gonna take that one since he's got two committees.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that, Scott. And our staff person, I'm gonna count on you to report all this.
I'm trying to.
All right, thank you. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. So for community, reading community first. Quality of life impacts on residents of wards 1, 4, and 5, including Kingsport, Village Green, Homes to Glen, Annapolis Walk, the Enclave, Truxton Heights, and the Bywater Corridor. Our representatives are Dan Brooks, Roger Kaiser Ball, represented today by Heidi, Kathy Ebner, Mina Carter. And all four of you up to the task, right?
And Gunny.
What's that?
Gunny's on that group as well.
Gunny's a nickname for somebody, right?
Curtis.
Curtis, I'm sorry, thank you, Curtis. Oh, Curtis, thank you. I skipped, I went from finances and community, I skipped, I apologize. Gunny. Do you prefer to be called Curtis or Gunny?
Gunny works.
Okay. So will one of you volunteer to be the chair of the communities group? I see one, Kathy. Community group, okay with that? Thank you. Environment, we have Bill Davidson and Matthew Johnson. Matthew, remind me who you are.
Matthew's chair is
Matthew, so Matthew has declined and Jesse Ill is going to take his place.
Jesse
Isla.
Okay, thank you.
And he's with, you know.
I do. South River Federation was former.
He was on the list, did you see?
I never saw him on the list.
So who's gonna be, instead of Matt Johnson, it's gonna be Jesse?
Jesse Isla.
Jesse Isla.
Is Jesse here?
No, he's not.
And Jim? I'll reach out to Jesse and we'll decide before.
Thank you.
Jared, how do you want to do that?
So will you take on environment unless you can get Jesse to do it?
Okay, yes, sure.
Thank you. Housing, we have Kathy Koch and Cliff Martin.
Well, since I'm not either, I'll nominate Kathy since she's actually in the city.
Okay. Land use. Land use is a big one because there's a lot of things in the resolution that kind of spoke to it, so I kind of did a little combining. So I combined land use in partnership with the government agencies aspect. So I won't read from the task force memo, but you can see all the things that land use covers. We have Elliot Powell and Phil Hager. Phil, are you up for this task of chairing the land use subcommittee?
I'd be delighted.
Thank you. I'm gonna go out of order here for a second. The resolution suggests we pick a vice chair. I do plan to be at the 6 committees that were, at the 6th meeting, I'm available on those. I would like to have vice chair in case circumstances change. So I'm looking for volunteers. I did kind of prompt someone to speak up, so I wasn't expecting anyone to raise their hand for this. But so if no one's gonna raise their hand, Elliot,
How did you do so?
vice chair. That's why I quickly went to Phil on that one last one. For traffic, we had Greg Stewart, John Corin, and Esther Flores. And traffic, I'm using a shorthand, includes connectivity and recreation. And one of you three will share this.
He's all the modes, I'm only one mode.
I mean, we could break you up into two groups. So transportation as one subcommittee and connectivity and recreation as the other.
I keep it together.
I think so too. So, can I be a volunteer?
Go ahead, Joe.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work, so I'm ready to support and be here for the city, but I'm not ready to volunteer.
Okay. John or Greg? Actually, Tom and Joel, I don't have you on committee, so I wasn't expecting either of you. So, what, of these committees, Joel, what committee do you want to be on?
Well, I could certainly do the traffic stuff.
Yeah? How'd you have to be chair of traffic too?
I'll do my best.
Alright, so. Thank you.
Well played. Thank you.
Tom, what committee are you here for?
What would you like to be on?
More fun.
I'm
assuming, I was assuming it was going to be either community or traffic.
Okay, well, we're not looking for chairs anymore, so you don't have to worry about getting thrown into that. So you want to be on both? Or you want to pick one?
Yeah, I'll just take the community end.
Community, okay. You'll connect with him later, please. All right, so we've gone through the subcommittees and we picked chairs. I don't think we need to do a formal voting on any of those, right? Everyone's good with all that? Kevin,
So I was going to present after Tom, so sort of summary if I could.
Please.
So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. You know, I'm laying this all on the table here. This is a committee that's pretty much been assembled by Sheila, so it's definitely from her willingness to take a look at you know, other options. So I want to thank you for doing that. But definitely, there's no stacked board here or anything like that. It's probably stacked the other way against me. But this is a big idea. We have one shot, one opportunity to do this. When we build public works, that's it for 50 or 100 years. When we build a new Hillman garage, that's it for 50 years or 100 years. So we know what my goal here is to connect communities and to create a greenway that can stretch all the way from Quiet Waters Park to the Poplar Trail, up to Crownsville and beyond, and over to the B&A Trail. So how do we connect that when you know that cities' revenues are flat? So we know that for a fact, that we are bumping up against our debt ceiling in this city. Are we going to have money for big ideas? The only way forward is to embrace the private sector and say, how can we leverage the private sector to help us with certain infrastructure needs? So this is a big idea, and I want to take it all the way back to Newtown. So Newtown, how many people here have been to Newtown? So we know Newtown should have been rebuilt 10 years ago. And we tried to get funding for it 10 years ago. That did not happen, and then we just walked away. Like the buildings were going to fix themselves, like the situation was going to get any better. And that didn't happen under my administration. When we put forward a proposal on Newtown, we had a plan B, we had a plan C. But we can't just rebuild Newtown in a vacuum. This idea is about stimulating the Forest Drive corridor. How can we stimulate that Forest Drive corridor to uplift everybody in that community? So I have to convince you that you're going to get something better than what we started with. And I truly believe that the public works facility is a low impact use in an area, and that it would fit on that site. And if we design it right, it will enhance the values of the area and it will stimulate the corridor. So it starts with Newtown. So Newtown is going to get torn down and rebuilt. But if it was just built out there on its own, it will not work. We have to get Woodside redeveloped. I'm currently talking to Woodside about a redevelopment of Woodside or rehabbing of Woodside and a community center in there. We were in Baltimore this week looking at a police boxing brigade facility that we think we could put in Woodside so that there'll be a police presence in that area and there'll be community connection between the police force and the kids so that they're not meeting them on a recreational side. That also will lead on to Homes in the Glen. And the bridge will land on the other side of the Legion, which is this strip of land here, which will be upgraded and landscaped all the way through to this corridor here. And then the bridge will be built, and the bridge will go across Forest Drive, and down Spa Road, and down Hilltop, and then down Spa Road. And so that will mean that not only a kid from Newtown, but a kid from Hunt Meadow, or a kid from Annapolis Middle, or a kid from Kingsport could safely get across Forest Drive onto the park at Heritage, which is a nice green space that could be utilised if people had some access to it. And then beyond that, they could get down Spa Road to Maryland Hall, and they wouldn't have to cross one road. They could loop around on the bridge that goes across Spa Road, get to Maryland Hall and not have to share that road with any kind of automobile. Or if they went the other way and went past the Cal Ripken Field and to the senior centre. And the senior centre, this is not just about mobilising kids, it's about mobilising seniors. People ask me, what are you worried about bikes for? Old people don't ride bikes. It's not true. If we make it safe, more people will consider that as an alternative transportation. And I'm just not talking about bikes, I'm talking about scooters or pedal assist bikes, these sorts of things that can get us out of our cars and get us around our city safely. So if you took that other way and you went to the library, you can get to the library and only cross one road. When the library is rebuilt, we will make sure there is a crosswalk there that is a state-of-the-art crosswalk that will get you across to the library, and you'll just cross one road. And then if you go beyond the library, you'll get to the Poplar Trail. We have plans now to connect the Poplar Trail all the way to the historic district and the other direction, past the mall, past the hospital, past the mall, under 50, and then working with the county, we'll get all the way across to Home Depot and Housley Road, which is the edge of Waterworks Park. That is 600 acres of green space that this city owns. We're currently cutting recreation trails, walking trails, riding trails into that park so that facility is accessible. So this idea is about uplifting a community and stimulating a corridor for the Forest Drive section and about optimizing the value of the land on Spa Road. So what we're going to do when we rebuild Newtown, what we're going to do when we rebuild Public Works is we're going to use Section 3 practices. Section 3 practices means when we award a contract, when people come into our community to build something, we ask them to employ a certain amount of people in the community. And that is essential because people need a pathway to employment. People need a pathway to a full-time job. And that will come because we will insist on that in the contracts that we sign to do these things. And so not only will this be a pathway to employment for some people and life-changing for some people, but it'll also mean that there's ownership. You have built the place that you live. You have built the place you go to work. You have built the bridge that your kid goes across. So I'm asking you to have an open mind here. Consider this, because we can do nothing. Nothing's easy. Doing the same thing every time is kind of what our fallback position is in this town. I'm saying, please keep an open mind when you look at this project. Think about what will happen if we don't do it. We'll get this facility back on Spa Road. There'll be no bridge across there. We can all say we like bridges and we should all do that, but we haven't done any of that. No one has ever considered it. We have great facilities in this city, but everything stops and starts and it doesn't flow. And so this is not just about Spa Road and Forest Drive. It is about the Poplar Trail, and it's about trying to connect the city all the way to the B&A Trail and make our city accessible, not just to city residents, but people who live on the peninsula, people who live in Arnold and things like that. And we're at a great moment in time now, for me especially. We have a great relationship with the county executive. We have worked as a team. We are like-minded in where we see the city heading. And so thank you all for being here. Thanks for letting me give you a bit of get in my soapbox here. I appreciate all the hard work you're going to do. I know that this town would be nothing without the volunteerism that we have, so I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd like to say that the Williams Whalen relocation is acceptable by me. I'd like to say that publicly. And also, the ability for children to get out of Newtown 20 and Woodside Gardens is also instrumental for them coming here to the Williams Center, where it's a program hub for all youth.
And what I say about that, one of the best things in this city is if you go to the Batesfield, there are Latino families, there are African American families, there are white families, there are rich people, there are poor people, there are old people, there are young people. They all share the same space. And when you do that, you make a better society. So when you build good public space, good community space, you build good community. And that's what this exercise is about. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a question for Jared. I have about scope of work.
Sure.
So on the community task force, we're to assess the quality of life impacts on the residents. So should we be taking into account that this bridge would be part of the proposal?
Yeah, absolutely. I would not be here if it wasn't for the bridges.
Okay.
Because the bridge is the connection. We have been putting people on the other side of the tracks. We've been building communities with fences around them, one road in, one road out. That practice has to change.
My question about that then is, has the financial viability of the bridge been assessed? Do we know how much the bridge is going to cost, and do we know that, I mean, do we have the information with which to, you know, if we're going to include that and the quality of life impacts, then do we have assurance that it's viable?
Let me answer it this way. Yes, the subcommittee should address it, and you should investigate those questions, and I think David will probably be the place to start, and he'll might direct it to Tom. To the extent that this, look, we have 4 months, we have no staff, well, other than help, but we have no money, we don't have time for delays. If you run into questions, studies that need to be done, or that you need answers to, questions that you haven't been able to answer, that should just be left as, this is a question that the city needs to answer before proceeding comes to conclusion. That's my view of what our role is. So hopefully that answer, our job is mostly going to be ask all the questions, figure out who the people we need to talk to, get the information we can, put it together in an organized way. And to the extent that there's still questions remaining, we leave those. This is a question you have to address. This is a decision that has to be made by the city. This is hopefully we could say this is what decision, for that decision, who gets to make that decision and when you need to decide it. There's going to be decisions for the city council to address. On selling Spa Road, they have to, so that's going to be a decision
Well, there's
highlight.
been a lot of information about sort of the land swap, and I think that's pretty, we haven't seen the financials, but, I think we're just sort of trusting that it will work, but just, like exactly where would the bridge land, would there an easement, none of that detail has been, other than a picture of a bridge.
That's going to be part of the subcommittee's work, just to ask those questions to get whatever.
Part of the community stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify what base information there is available about the concept plan. When you say one bridge, my understanding is the concept plan is 2 bridges, one on Forest Drive and the other for Spa Road. So just like the basic knowledge of what the concept is, there's the 5-minute video, right, that you produced. And then what else is there that all of the task force members will have?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's partly why we're looking for an official proposal for you, that we could say, this is your proposal. This is what David's going to present as, this is the city's thoughts on it, which is more helpful in a presentation like this where you can explain all these details like you did for us. It's maybe less helpful on the website. When we get to the public hearing, we're also going to ask for quick presentations. Let me just jump to that part if I can.
Okay.
So the schedule envisions 6 meetings, today being the kickoff. For the meeting number 2, what I'm hoping for is that the committees have enough information to put together an outline of what their issues are. I don't expect full reports, paragraphs, but enough information so that when we get to meeting 3, which is the public hearing, that the public will have some information to digest. And so we'll need digestible information from the subcommittees.
And a bridge like this is about $2 million. It's not fancy. I'm not saying this is the bridge that you have built. The most expense, and the quote that Tom got for the bridge across Spa Road was about $1 million. The expense in bridges is generally the land acquisition on both sides. And in this situation, we would have control of the Forest Drive side near the Public Works side. And then the heritage side is already in a conservation, and we've already talked to the church about some kind of easement or some purchase arrangement. We can use open space money to work out some kind of deal on that. So, and what I want to say is, if you go in front of the Safeway on Forest Drive and you see that very wide path, whatever happens at Crystal Springs or
Providence Point.
Providence Point, sorry. Whatever happens at Providence Point, and I've stayed away from it because I support the wine growth plan, 4 things that can get done. We should make as much of Forest Drive exactly the same way as it is in front of the Safeway, because if we can do that, we can actually put a small emergency vehicle on that, because we all know what happens to Forest Drive in those critical moments. So trying to widen that and trying to expand this past Public Works beyond Providence Point and beyond Annapolis Middle, where my kids go to school, is going to be a high priority, and that has to be in conjunction with us working together in the county. We communicate regularly with the county. We meet monthly, cross-jurisdictionally, so county, senators, delegates, and the city all talk continually about where we're moving as a community. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Other questions for Gavin?
Oh, you're gonna have a bridge on the
One bridge is
You guys pick up from place here.
all the acronyms that have been thrown out.
Yeah.
You got a glossary of terms?
I don't, but we'll have to ask our Dave Carroll to work on that for us. And the question was, lots of terms, yeah, acronyms, I think was particularly the concern. Good question.
I'm not clear on the scope question. So is there one bridge in this concept, or are there two bridges, including the scope of what we're studying?
So the
bridge over Forest Drive is also included?
So Gavin's vision includes a bridge over Spa Road and a bridge over Forest Drive.
Cool vision, I mean,
You know,
not
scope, we don't get into debate whether you like the vision.
Yeah, it's the scope.
Okay, right, scope. So the vision includes that, and that's part of what I think we should address. When the finance gets, and the land use starts diving in, they'll find that there's not enough money between selling Spa Road, buying Forest Drive. The difference is not enough to fund both bridges. So that's what raised the question of where else is funding coming from, and that's where we heard Greg talk about state money.
And it would be build grants. So build grants would be what we're applying for here, not just for the bridges, but for this whole project. You can draw down on build grants in proportionally. So you could do one section that does this area first, and then the other section that connects us to the B&A trail later. So we're going to be applying for an overall grant, which will encompass this, and we'll use, and we'll put the money into a lockbox. And that lockbox will only be able to use for these things that are.
There are state and federal grant sources available. There's a bridge, a hyperbiker bridge will be built over the Patuxent River that construction will start in the spring. That will connect the 6-mile existing WB&A trail in Anne Arundel with the existing trail across the river in PG County. The state funded most of the design with a $500,000 bikeways grant, and the construction is mostly coming from a transportation alternatives grant. So there's money that can be found for these types of projects.
So that we're all working from the same information. Now, you know, I may be hearing one thing, somebody's hearing something else. I mean, could we get information on the bridge like we have on the swap, kind of something in writing with picture? I mean, otherwise, I don't know. I don't know where our basis for starting.
David or Tom, you want to help address that question?
Well, I mean, I have put together a budget and information on the Spa Road Bridge specifically, so I could certainly make that available and the estimate that was put together for its construction. I think that would be helpful. I have not been involved in the Forest Drive Bridge, but it could be probably put together by the city.
Yeah, and I've asked my engineers to look at what has been built, because Anne Arundel County has built several of these bridges. So we're gonna look at those costs. We're looking at other places. Tallahassee is in the process of building one over a road about the size of Forest Drive, so we're looking at that. It's a bit higher than this, but we're gonna put together some of those comparisons for costs.
Just for clarity.
David, perhaps by the end of the week, hopefully time of your presentation could be given to David and I. David, if you could communicate with Ina Young, who's helping us with the website, if that proposal, also the 5-minute video that was referenced, that Gavin did, could also be on our webpage to help people get educated on what this proposal is that they're trying to evaluate.
And just for further clarity, and avoiding boiling the ocean or scope creep, if the Forest Drive Bridge is common to all options, then it doesn't need to be in our scope.
It's not common to all options.
Okay.
Because if the city does no swap and just builds on
Then you wouldn't do that.
Spa Road, there's no funding, initial seed money.
But we're not really evaluating that. If I understood you correctly, the evaluation that you're asking us to do is only whether the swap that's proposed makes sense.
I think what the words are benefits and detriments. Pros and cons is another way to look at it. So if you like the idea of a pedestrian bridge, that would go into the pro benefits for that selection. The cons might be the cost of that bridge and having to come up with that funding.
It's part of the proposal. That's my point, is that, and we need information with which to evaluate it.
Yeah, I guess one of those mental struggles, and I don't know, maybe somebody from the city can answer it, is if we go down this path and sort of the cons outweigh the pros, it doesn't seem to solve the urgency problem that Public Works is trying to solve. So how does that get rectified? Is there a plan B?
Well,
that's outside of the scope?
It's either choice A or choice B. So if the subgroup says, you know, the cons in this far outweigh the benefits, then that subcommittee can say the default is no action, no swap. Stick, build, and swap road. And then the other side. So we might have different subcommittees coming up with different recommendations within their subcommittee.
but that's partly why we're just trying to identify as many issues, get as many of the answers as we can, and move along as quickly as possible. So hopefully, there'll be questions that everyone has for this next meeting. Just, even if you don't know the answer or where you find the answer, get all your questions in as part of that rough outline, so that when the public sees, okay, they have a lot of questions about the bridge, I don't need to ask my question. That subcommittee already realizes they have questions about the bridge that they're trying to answer. Hold on a second.
In terms of the urgency, I just wanted to clarify. So what I understood when you made your presentation, David, was that you basically, Public Works had gotten almost to past third base, almost at home with moving forward with building it at Spa Road. So in terms of urgency, right, so I just wanna make that clear, that you know, the option would be to stay there, maybe be the fastest thing in terms of urgency, right? So,
Yeah,
I
I think
just
we'll
wanna
agree.
make that clear, yeah.
The quickest thing to get Public Works a better facility is to not make a swap and to build at Public Works. Whether that's the best thing or not is a different question.
Yeah, and just to add a little additional information. So, you know, we started the construction project, so we moved into our temporary facilities thinking that's where we'd be for a year while we did the construction anew, right? So that's the trailers, and that's, we rented a site off of Taylor, over behind Heidler, across from the police station. So we have a storage yard over there. So we set up all these temporary facilities, and now they've become longer term than what was expected.
I think, responding off of what she had said, I think perhaps some of the struggle with this is that we're trying to move all of the variables at once. And I actually think some feed off of each other. And so it might be that we have to stagger our work, and some of the subcommittees need to move earlier to give other subcommittees what they need to kind of make their evaluation. So, you know, actually nailing down what is the proposal and what is the financials of the proposal is kind of fundamental to everything in some ways. There are just some subcommittees that are going to be that way, because you're not going to know, you know, what you can potentially afford until the financials are evaluated. You're not going to know what the financials are until we have a nailed down proposal of we're evaluating this specific proposal for the property. I mean, I think the most dangerous thing I heard today was, well, you know, we can change around based on what the city wants. You can't evaluate a moving proposal. We need one official locked down.
And you're not gonna get that. We're not gonna get this as a task force. The Spa Road facility becomes more valuable, as you heard, with the more people, residences that is allowed to build on it.
Yeah.
And it becomes less valuable with the fewer. You're not gonna, that's gonna be jello for us the whole time we exist.
But I think if you want answers and not just questions at the end of this process, you need a firm proposal to evaluate.
I'm sure, I agree with you, it'd be helpful, but we're not gonna get it. I think you've gotta, you've gotta proceed as you're not gonna get an answer to that. Tom hopefully can give us some, scope. So at best, it might be, the Spa Road will be worth $4 million if you could fit 100 residents. It would be worth $2 million if you only could fit 20. I just made those numbers up, so don't repeat them.
Well, I'm talking less the density, which, I mean, you can base case, best case, worst case scenario out. I'm talking about the things like the, you know, showcase stormwater management or nonprofit use. Personally, I think if we want to be able to give any firm input, so we're not moving forward by just asking more questions, then there has to be some type of agreement. I get that it's not from us, it's the policymakers that have to decide this, to say, we want you to evaluate this proposal.
Yeah.
Chair, can I just say, what Tom's talking about is building on one side of Spa Road. It still leaves an opportunity side, because we can add another trailer, maybe to ease if we go that direction. But the Forest Drive side is the topography is much easier to work with than the current site, I believe, on Spa Road. So I'm just saying.
And it's hopefully something the environment group can look at.
But that opportunity side we ought to think about, because it could be like, let's talk about saving the Salt Dome and making the kind of screening room for the film festival. There's a site we could build a WeWork space or an REI play or something, you know, that could be exciting. It's up to the city to what they want to do, but that site would be available once the Public Works moves into its new home. So there's a lot of potential for that side of Spa Road as well. I just want to point that out to everybody.
I mean, it seems to me the best we can do is sort of ask the questions and then sort of identify the variables that are
Exactly.
most concerning or, limiting.
If this happens and you have this consequence.
Right.
B happens and you have
Because
different.
clearly there's things that nobody's gonna know until, like, the deal could be, it's 2 million for that and 4 million for this, and you have 2 million to play with, and then once you move forward, there's an environmental issue that's uncovered that changes that calculus, or some other thing happens that's gonna change the calculus, and all we can do is identify those as sort of.
Committees, did you have a vision as far as the tasks for each of those committees that we should be focused on, so we don't duplicate efforts? Because some of these, to me, can easily
So
cross.
that's one of the reasons I've been trying to build contact information. Trace with each other. That's partly why I ask everyone to give written materials ahead of time, so I have time to put it together and send it back out to you in collective form. That's why I had dates that, like ideally would be strict on. So before the next meeting, we have August 9th, and hopefully each chair can send in those outlines. I can send it right back out to you in collective form in time for the 13th meeting. That'll get us ready for the September 3rd public hearing. That'll be in city council chambers. All of the meetings are here. And then we have, after the public hearing, we have 3 more meetings to tidy it up and flush it out. So, hopefully that answers your question. No, I don't.
Jared, may I ask, as you're making your decision and your plans for the subjects of the next meeting, that you indicate which staff, if you need staff there, whether it's a legal issue or.
Yeah, we can go through it again. So,
Do you? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
so the business group, there's not really a specific task person, official city staff person to help us, but I think everyone that you're at our disposal. City employees, you'll know who to reach out to. City finances, we don't have someone here from the finance department. David, you're gonna be our conduit to any financial.
Jody will be that person there, finance director.
Okay. Community is the life impacts. Community, have any question about who your staff contacts are? Maybe just do it differently. Again, Sally Nash, the land use people, 2 people to her right. Sorry, Ms. Berger, Lincoln. Sorry. Law office, in front of her is transportation cooperative. We have a lot of mayor's office people here, including the mayor. So here, everyone else is from the mayor's office.
So if there's I would think that if there was a question about what department,
Yeah.
it should come to the city manager. And so,
Okay.
and
Thank you.
then we
Perfect.
will, determine who best to assign.
Fantastic, appreciate that, Lynn.
Jared, if you could maybe like on the spreadsheet, because obviously there's some, we'll assign chairs and all that, we can maybe update that, maybe have the logical links of which committee contact, is primary, because I think it's very important to identify the key issues in each area, but then also if you know you have a dependency on a different subcommittee, to identify that as well, so that that information can get over to that subcommittee.
Lynn Farrow, who is the new assistant city manager, I think one of them sat directly to her. So for every committee, it's gonna be Lynn Farrow.
Okay, so we'll go to you, and you can contact, okay, that's great.
We'll make sure your questions get answered. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Thank you, Lynn.
And
Just from a sort of logistics perspective, are you expecting us to meet virtually, or do you expect subcommittees to meet together personally?
Subcommittees, however
Do whatever you wanna do.
You're not subject to the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
Because you're not a quorum of the full group. This group is subject to the Open Meetings Act, so all our meetings will be here or in the city council chambers and with advance notice, with an agenda published in advance. Subcommittees, you're on your own, how often you wanna meet and how you wanna do it.
Okay.
In person, but whatever, or not. Good question. I didn't get.
No, good, thank you.
Jared, land use, you had Phil and myself. Who else did you? That's a pretty big
It is.
topic there.
Yeah.
Good luck.
That's all I was given for land use experts. Anyone here want some help with land use?
Makes it 50-50.
Yeah. I would rely on city staff. To do both. My hope is that a lot of the questions we have answers already prepared in existence. It's our job to figure out where those answers are and then pull it together. I don't think we'll have the time or the resources to create a lot or at all other than pull it together.
Or budget, yeah.
Right, right.
If we wanted to combine, let's say with traffic or something like that, you're okay with it? If we,
I mean, at some point.
Depends on your offer.
Yeah. Our mission is to report back to the city on those 8 topics, and we combine it, but however we change the combination, we do it specifically.
Roger, and why don't you email me to?
All right, again, if you didn't get an email, I need your contact information, we should update it, and new magazine off, so that we get updated. Thank you, everyone.
Karen, before you adjourn, I'd like to acknowledge Alderman Payon, who's joined us from Ward
Thank you,
2.
Fred. I found these helpful, we can pass them back to the middle, we'll say